and hopefully bipartisan U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. Tomorrow, I will join Prime Minister Abe of Japan to continue our progress in finalizing a terrific new trade deal. As the United Kingdom makes preparations to exit the European Union, I have made clear that we stand ready to complete an exceptional new trade agreement with the UK that will bring tremendous benefits to both of our countries. We are working closely with Prime Minister Boris Johnson on a magnificent new trade deal. The most important difference in America's new approach on trade concerns our relationship with China. In 2001, China was admitted to the World Trade Organization. Our leaders then argued that this decision would compel China to liberalize its economy and strengthen protections to provide things that were unacceptable to us. Decades later, this theory has been tested and proven completely wrong. Not only has China declined to adopt promised reforms, it has embraced an economic model dependent on massive market barriers, heavy state subsidies, currency manipulation, product dumping, forced technology transfers, and the theft of intellectual property, and also trade secrets on a grand scale. As just one example used in countless electronics. To advance the Chinese government's 5-year economic plan, a company owned by the Chinese state allegedly stole Micron's designs, valued at up to $8.7 billion. Soon, the Chinese company obtains patents for nearly an identical product, and Micron was banned from selling its own goods in China. But we are seeking justice. The United States lost 60,000 factories after China entered the WTO. This is happening to other countries all over the globe. The World Trade Organization needs drastic change. The second largest economy in the world should not be permitted to declare itself a developing country in order to game the system at others' expense. For years, these abuses were tolerated, ignored, or even encouraged. Globalism exerted a religious pull over past leaders, causing them to ignore their own national interests. But as far as America is concerned, those days are over. To confront these unfair practices, I placed massive tariffs on more than $500 billion worth of Chinese-made goods. Already, as a result of these tariffs, supply chains are relocating back to America and to other nations, and billions of dollars are being paid to our Treasury. The American people are absolutely committed to restoring balance to our relationship with China. Hopefully, we can reach an agreement that will be beneficial for both countries. But as I have made very clear, I will not accept a bad deal for the American people. As we endeavor to stabilize our relationship, we're also carefully monitoring the situation in Hong Kong. The world fully expects that the Chinese government will honor its binding treaty. The United States does not seek conflict with any other nation. We desire peace, cooperation, and mutual gain with all. But I will never fail to defend America's interests. One of the greatest security threats facing peace-loving nations today is the repressive regime in Iran. The regime's record of death and destruction is well known to us all. Not only is Iran the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism, but Iran's leaders are fueling the tragic wars in both Syria and Yemen. At the same time, the regime is squandering the nation's wealth and future in a fanatical quest for nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them. We must never allow this to happen. To stop Iran's path to nuclear weapons and missiles, I withdrew the United States from the terrible Iran nuclear deal, which has very little time remaining, did not allow inspect Iran's bloodlust. As long as Iran's menacing behavior continues, sanctions will not be lifted. They will be tightened. Iran's leaders will have turned a proud nation into just another cautionary tale of what happens when a ruling class abandons its people and embarks on a crusade for personal power and riches. For 40 years, the world has listened to Iran's rulers as they lash out at everyone else for the problems they alone have created. They conduct ritual chants of death to America and traffic in monstrous anti-Semitism. Last year, the country's supreme leader stated Israel is a malignant, cancerous tumor. Fanatics have long used hatred of Israel to distract from their own failures. Thankfully, there is a growing recognition in the wider Middle East that the countries of the region share common interests in battling extremism and unleashing economic opportunity. That is why it is so important to have full, normalized relations between Israel and its neighbors. Only a relationship built on common interests, mutual respect, and religious tolerance can forge a better future. Iran's citizens deserve a government that cares about reducing poverty, ending corruption, and increasing jobs, not stealing their money to fund and massacre abroad. It is time for Iran's leaders to finally put the Iranian people first. America is ready to embrace friendship with all who genuinely seek peace and respect. Many of America's closest friends today were once our greatest foes. The United States has never believed in permanent enemies. We want partners, not adversaries. America knows that while anyone can make war, only the most courageous can choose peace. For this same reason, we have pursued bold diplomacy on the Korean Peninsula. I have told Kim Jong-un what I truly believe, that like Iran, his country is full of tremendous untapped potential, but that to realize that promise, North Korea must denuclearize. Around the world, our message is clear. America's goal is lasting, not to go with these endless wars that never end. With that goal in mind, my administration is also pursuing the hope of a brighter future in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the Taliban has chosen to continue their savage attacks. We will continue to work with our coalition of Afghan partners to stamp out terrorism, and we will never stop working to make peace a reality. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we are joining with our partners to ensure stability and opportunity, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Panama, to uphold the integrity of borders and ensure safety and prosperity for our people. I would like to thank President Lopez Obrador of Mexico for the great cooperation we are receiving and for right now putting 27,000 troops on our southern border. Mexico is showing us great respect, and I respect them in return. The U.S. of illegal immigration. To anyone conducting crossings of our border illegally, please hear these words. Do not pay the smugglers. Do not pay the coyotes. Do not put yourself in danger. Do not put your children in danger, because if you make it here, you will not be allowed in. You will be promptly returned home. You will not be released into our country. As long as I am President of the United States, we will enforce our laws and protect our borders. For all of the countries of the Western Hemisphere, our goal is to help people invest in the bright futures of their own nation. Our region, they are waiting also to be pursued. Throughout the hemisphere, there are millions of hardworking, patriotic young people eager to build, innovate, and achieve. But these nations cannot reach their potential if a generation of youth abandon their homes in search of a life elsewhere. We want every nation in our region to flourish and its people to thrive in freedom and peace. In that recent report from the UN Human Rights Council, women in Venezuela stand in line for 10 hours a day waiting for food. Over 15,000 people have been detained as political prisoners. Modern-day death squads are carrying out thousands of extrajudicial killings. The dictator Maduro is a Cuban puppet protected by Cuban bodyguards, hiding from his own people, while Cuba plunders Venezuela's oil wealth to sustain its own corrupt communist rule. Since I last spoke in this hall, the United States and our partners have built a historic coalition of 55 countries that recognize the legitimate government of Venezuela. To the Venezuelans trapped in this nightmare, please know that all of America is united behind you. The United States has vast quantities of humanitarian aid ready and waiting to be delivered. We're watching the Venezuela situation very closely. We await the day when democracy will be restored, when Venezuela will be free, and when liberty will prevail throughout this hemisphere. One of the most serious challenges our countries face is the specter of socialism. It's the wrecker of nations and destroyer of societies. Events in Venezuela remind us all that socialism and communism are not about justice. They are not about equality. They are not about lifting up the poor. And they are certainly not about good of the nation. Socialism and communism are about one thing only: power for the ruling class. Today I repeat a message for the world that I have delivered at home. America will never be a socialist country. In the last century, socialism and communism killed 100 million people. Sadly, as we see in Venezuela, the death toll continues in this country. These totalitarian ideologies, combined with modern technology, have the power to excise new and disturbing forms of suppression and domination. For this reason, the United States is taking steps to better screen foreign technology and investments, and to protect our data and our security. We urge every nation present to do the same. Freedom and democracy must be constantly guarded and protected, both abroad and from within. We must always be skeptical of those who want conformity and control. Even in free nations, we see alarming signs and new challenges to liberty. A small number of social media platforms are acquiring immense power. A permanent political class is openly disdainful, dismissive, and defiant of the will of the people. A faceless bureaucracy operates in secret and weakens democratic rule. Media and academic and institutions. Yesterday, I was also pleased to host leaders for a discussion about an ironclad American commitment protecting religious leaders and also protecting religious freedom. This fundamental right is under growing threat around the world. Hard to believe, but 80% of the world's population lives in countries where religious liberty is in significant danger or even completely outlawed. Americans will never fire in the fate of our nation, a proud and fiercely independent people. The true good of a nation can only be pursued by those who love it, by citizens who are rooted in its history, who are nourished by its culture, committed to its values, attached to its people, and who know that its future is theirs to build or theirs to lose. Patriots see a nation and its destiny in ways no one else can. Liberty is only preserved, sovereignty is only secured, democracy is only sustained, greatness is only realized by the will and devotion of patriots. In their spirit, the leaders here today join us in the most fulfilling mission a person could have, the most profound contribution anyone can make. Lift up your nations, cherish your culture, honor your histories, treasure your citizens, make your country strong and prosperous and righteous, honor the dignity of your people, and nothing will be outside of your reach. When our nations are greater, the future will be brighter, our people will be happier, and our partnerships will be stronger. With God's help, together we will cast off the enemies of liberty and overcome the oppressors of dignity. We will set new standards of living and reach new heights of human achievement. We will rediscover old truths, unravel old mysteries, and make thrilling new breakthroughs. And we will find more beautiful friendship and more harmony among nations than ever before. My fellow leaders, the path to peace and progress and freedom and justice and a better world for all humanity begins at home. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the nations of the world. And God bless America. Thank you very much.
American public and the Congress to see what actually happened. Okay? All right. And by the way, when they say fully declassified, I'm not quite sure what that means. Does that mean they get to determine what is classified and what is not classified, or is it the full transcript, period? We don't know the answer to that either. Okay. Now, lawlessness and executive overreach are common themes in the Trump administration. And the topic of today's press conference is, unfortunately, another egregious example. Remember, Congress explicitly and repeatedly rejected the president's request for border wall funding. Now he's trying to go around Congress and the Constitution to get funds elsewhere. In this case, he's taking $3.6 billion from our service members, from military families, from military readiness. Tomorrow, my Republican colleagues will once again have the opportunity to take a public stand on the President's emergency declaration. If Republicans choose to stand with President Trump, they will be saying they fully support allowing the President to take money from our military to fund a border wall, of course, that he said that Mexico would pay for. Many of my Republican colleagues have military installations with major projects in their states that would suffer because of the President's emergency declaration. The President promised Mexico would pay for it. Sadly, it's our military and their families that seem to be paying for it. And that is so wrong. We hope our Republican colleagues will have the strength and courage. Will Senate Republicans vote to defend our troops, their families, and their children? I hope so. And this vote is part and parcel, or sort of another way that the President's overreach goes way too far. What's happening in the House today and what's happening in the Senate on the emergency declaration all relate to a President who knows no bounds, who has no respect for the Constitution, for rule of law, for Congress, or the American people. Senator Kaine.
Thank you, Leader Schumer, and thanks to all of you. President Trump, promised that Mexico would pay for this wall, and yet what we see is who's paying for it: our troops, our military families, and our national security. The President's effort to take this money affects projects in so many states. In my state, he is taking $26 million out of a ship maintenance facility that has been cited by the DOD as having numerous life, health, and safety issues for the members of the military who work there. $41 million out of 2 hazardous chemical storage facilities, again, where the issues that need to be repaired affect the life, health, and safety of those who work there, and $10 million out of a cyber facility at Joint Base Langley Eustis, cyber obviously a key priority. The President is also proposing to cut $771 million out of the European Defense and Reassurance Initiative, which is designed to help our allies check against Russian aggression. Mexico is going to pay for this. Now it's our national security and our troops and military families that are paying for it. We got 59 votes on this in March, 59 votes against the President's emergency declaration, but that was before the Republicans knew which projects in their own states were at issue. It's going to be fascinating tomorrow to see, now that they know that their own state's projects are being affected, whether they'll stand up for our military and stand up for their own state's projects or cave into the President. I believe Senator Cardin is next.
Yes, here's the list.
Well, let me thank Senator Schumer for his leadership on this. Let me just explain what this means. The President's abusing his power. It's very clear Congress intended the money to be spent in military construction. He's now using an emergency declaration to transfer that to a wall. Clearly, Congress rejected the wall. This is abuse of power. What does it mean? So let me talk as a Maryland senator for one moment at Joint Base Andrews, which is located not too far from here. There are 3 MILCON projects that are being transferred funds that are located in Maryland, 2 at Joint Base Andrews and 1 at Meade. The one I want to talk about is a $13 million project that would replace the Child Development Center at Joint Base Andrews. The Child Development Center that's currently being used was built in 1941. It has already had to deal with a roof that collapsed. It has regularly backed up sewage that goes into the classrooms. It has problems with mold, it has problems with pest control, and it is not large enough to handle the demand from the military families. So don't take what I say, listen to what DOD said in justification of this project. The failure to act on this project, first, it's not clear this building can pass inspection, but what's going to happen is more and more of the military families that are at Joint Base Andrews are going to have to use child development centers located privately off base. And the DOD has told us that's going to be approximately $10,000 per family that they're going to have to pay out of pocket because we are not providing adequate child development centers on Joint Base Andrews itself. So when President Trump says that Mexico is paying for the wall, no, military families are going to directly pay for this transfer of funds. This is an abuse. It should never happen. We'll have a chance to reverse that tomorrow, and I just urge all of our colleagues to look at what the consequences of this abuse of power is by President Trump. And with that, I would turn to Senator Schatz.
In Alaska, Fort Greely will not expand its missile interceptor field to stop a North Korean long-range missile. In Kentucky, Fort Campbell won't see a new middle school need. In South Carolina, they won't replace a fire station at risk of structural collapse. In North Carolina, they won't replace a dental facility that is currently so bad that the DoD itself says, quote, it results in compromised readiness, uncoordinated care delivery, and inappropriate use of medical resources. And this is not a rhetorical flourish from Senate Democrats. I encourage all of you, this is public information. There are 126 forms that came in. They're called the 1391 forms. My office has them. Senator Schumer's office has them. And they describe the need. They describe the need in the Department of Defense's own words: life safety, health, readiness. And $3.6 billion and possibly more will be raided from the United States military, from service members and their families, in order to fund this wall. Now, tomorrow we have a really crystal clear choice to make. Politics is not always so simple, but tomorrow it will be. Do you stand with military families, or do you stand with President Trump? We have an opportunity to do the right thing tomorrow. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Senator Schatz. You know, the president travels often out of Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland that Senator Cardin mentioned. And when he does that, he walks by service men and women. The action he's taken demonstrates a total disregard for the well-being of those service men and women and their families. Because as Senator Cardin said, it's the Air Force itself that described the despicable conditions that exist at that child care center. It's the Air Force document itself, which I have in my hand, which talks about backed up sewage, broken HVAC systems, and other problems that make this a health risk to the kids of the families who serve at Andrews Air Force Base. The Air Force also points out that the costs of requiring those families to go to a different center will be around $9,000 per family, an unaffordable price at the salaries for those service men and women. And the Air Force itself points out that as a result of this action, readiness will be compromised. And so what we ask is, when the president goes out to Andrews Air Force Base or other military installations, he actually think about the needs of the men and women who are serving our country. I think there's one thing the American public remembers very clearly from both the campaign and what the president said after the campaign, and that is Mexico was going to pay for the wall. He did not campaign around the country saying military families are going to have to pay for the wall. He said Mexico was going to pay for the wall. Now we find out that none of that was ever true, that military families are going to have to pay the cost, including those who serve at Andrews Air Force Base. And finally, this is blatantly unconstitutional. And I think all of us urge our Republican colleagues, regardless of where they stand on the wall, think about the precedent they are setting when they allow an executive, a president, regardless of party, to claim this emergency authority to raid funds that have been appropriated by Congress and approved by the president with his signature, and to come back and undermine it. It is a direct attack on the Constitution and the ability of Congress to reflect the people's desires when it comes to putting together the budget. And so I'm now pleased to turn it over to somebody who has served our country in the military and now is a United States Senator, Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Senator Van Hollen. And again, thank you, Leader Schumer. Look, it shouldn't really be that hard. Donald Trump's failure to convince Congress to force Americans to pay for his wall may be a national embarrassment for him, but it is not a national emergency. To come to terms with the reality that Donald Trump lied, Republicans have to say enough is enough. Mexico isn't going to pay for this wall. And as my colleagues have said, our military and their families are paying for it, as Trump steals critical funds intended to support our troops and military families. In Illinois, those funds are also going to include a firefighting station that is used to secure the safety of our Air Force air crews as they conduct training, as they conduct missions around the world. We are no longer going to be able to upgrade the firefighting station that will make sure that our crews can land safely and will be protected. In Arizona, it includes taking funding away from maintenance facilities so that it can meet occupational health and safety standards. In fact, the facility is so swamped that they no longer have sufficient parking spaces for all the military equipment that needs to be worked on. So we know this really isn't about border security. It's about politics. If the president actually wanted to secure the border, he wouldn't strip funding away from the military. And by the way, it's not just DOD that he's stripping funding away from, he's also taking it away from the Coast Guard. As if that's not bad enough, he's slashing money from schools and child care centers, as my colleagues have said. And it makes me furious that after we've asked our servicemen and women to serve time and again, to step up to be deployed, we can't even watch out for their kids. And the bottom line is this: Donald Trump will continue violating law after law until those in a position to do something say enough. And this week, the Senate can do just that. The Senate can say enough by voting to stop Donald Trump's brazen power grab that harms our national security, harms our military, harms their families, and threatens to set a far-reaching precedent that Republicans may not like much in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. This was great. One other point I'd like to make, that I am going to ask a unanimous consent request on the floor of the Senate shortly, that be the sense of the Senate that the whistleblower complaint be provided to Congress as required by law. We'll see if our Republican friends block it. We don't know. Okay, questions? Yes.
On the whistleblower story, do you believe that the president has committed impeachable offenses, or is it worthy of an impeachment inquiry to discover them?
Well, let me say this. I speak regularly with Leader Pelosi. Spoke to her last night, again, twice this morning. And as I've said before, and I told the Speaker this again, I believe she is handling this appropriately, and she has my support. We in the Senate are focused now on, first, the emergency declaration, but second, on this unanimous consent request that would say that the Senate believes we ought to get the complaint. As I said earlier, it's the complaint that's key, more than the transcript of the President's phone call with the President of the Ukraine.
So she's on board with impeachment, are you?
I've said what I'm going to say.
Can you speak more about whether you have reason to believe you'll get any more Republicans?
Well, look, there are a whole bunch of Republicans who voted for it last time, voted to support the President, did not vote to disapprove, who now are learning that their military bases and their military readiness, their military personnel and families are being hurt. So I would hope we'd get some more votes. Our Republican friends will have to answer to the people in their states, particularly the military families. Yes?
Do you have confidence in Acting Director McGuire at this juncture, and should the President nominate a permanent DNI?
We'll see what happens when he comes before the intelligence committees, but I have a whole lot of questions about him. Right now, I could not say I have confidence in him.
Leader Schumer, polls show that the public thinks impeaching Trump is unpopular. They don't want to go forward with it. Are you worried at all about the political impact?
Bottom line is, I think Speaker Pelosi is handling it correctly. Okay? Last one.
Or if they don't turn over the complaint like you want, is that grounds for an inquiry to get it?
I have confidence in Speaker Pelosi. Thank you, everybody.
committee chairmen have already been doing.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, what was your
How
question?
how is what Pelosi announced today during caucus any different than what the committee chairmen have already been doing?
Well, making it very clear that the president is engaged in conduct that is a grave new level of lawlessness that has warranted our coming together in a much more formal way to engage in impeachment inquiry. We have had an impeachment inquiry proceeding in a number of different committees. This would encompass that inquiry with an umbrella approach, and because he has leveraged foreign aid to target political enemies, because he has obstructed justice, because he has refused to transmit the whistleblower's complaint as the law requires. Even the Republican United States Senate just voted by unanimous consent to tell the president that he needed to submit that required document. This has really, I think, fallen upon all of us who believe that we're living in a moment that is something that we'll be held accountable for, and that we have to make sure that we can answer the constitutional call, live by our oath, and to do anything else, given the gravity of the president's obscene violation of the law, would really be an affront to democracy.
What's the next step and how quickly will this move?
The speaker's going to speak at 5 o'clock, or in the next few moments, and I'm sure she's going to outline that. We are, continuing to have a discussion amongst ourselves about how it would proceed. So I'll leave that to the speaker to talk about.
There should be a vote on the House floor.
Well, tomorrow we're going to vote on the House floor, as the Senate did today, on the president's refusal to transmit under the law, as is required, the whistleblower complaint. So that's the next step.
Chairman
Thank you all.
Schiff. Chairman Schiff.
Well, it's different from the previous.
No, I mean, it's different, very different.
Why is that? Why does it feel different?
Well, I think it's a very serious matter, and I think people were in there to learn. And so there's no joking, no trying to grandstand it. I think everybody's serious about what's going on.
How did the speaker describe it in there?
It's a very serious matter. Maybe the most serious matter that we've faced in our careers in politics.
How is it different than what the committees were already doing? These committees were already investigating some of
Well, one difference is that the number of us who are supporting what they're doing has dramatically increased. And I think there's a unity in what we are doing right now, and I think they're going to. No.
Anything in those
No.
Does this end with a vote on the floor?
That's up to the speaker. I don't know. The transcript, before I leave it, the transcript means nothing. We want to hear from the whistleblower because there's more than.
Mr. Rasmussen, how is this different than what the committees were already doing?
We're full steam ahead.
But weren't you doing that?
This is a full-blown impeachment inquiry, and Speaker Pelosi is our leader. It's a great day for America. It's a great day.
Well, thank you very much. We're glad to be joined by the president of Iraq and his representatives, and I will say that we've had a very good couple of meetings with Iraq. We're doing well with Iraq. It's been a very long and complicated but friendly relationship, especially over the last little while. I was in Iraq a little while ago, as you know, and it's fascinating what's taking place. So we have a lot to talk about. There's things to talk about that we can't talk about in front of you, but we have a lot of good things to talk about. And you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's an opportunity, Mr. President, to reaffirm our gratitude to the United States and the international coalition that has come to help us overcome the tyranny of ISIS and terrorism. This was an amazing battle, and Iraqis were in the forefront of this battle, but your support has been absolutely crucial, and we appreciate it. Now the task of rebuilding Iraq, reconstructing Iraq, affirming the sovereignty of Iraq, and being a partner in the neighborhood for a more stable Middle East is a hope and an aspiration that we look to the help of the United States and the help of the international community.
Well, I understand, and it has been a great achievement. We took 100% of the caliphate, from ISIS, and ISIS now we have thousands and thousands of people that we've captured. These people have done a lot of destruction, well, not only in that area, in a lot of other areas, but as you know, we have thousands of people. We'll talk about that also, because we're going to have to do something, put them on trial, et cetera, but we've captured thousands of ISIS fighters and taken back 100% of the caliphate. And when I first became president, it was a mess. It was a big mess, and we all worked together and we got it done, but it was a great achievement, so we appreciate that, and we look forward to our discussion. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, Prime Minister Pelosi. Thank you, Mr. President. Good to see you. Iraq has declared that it won't allow its territory to be used as a launching pad against its neighbors. Can you assure us that you can control all the rogue elements, especially with the Hajj?
It's our sovereign responsibility. It's our sovereign responsibility to abide by our constitution. Iraq not to be used as a base for any threat against our neighbors. It is work in progress, and Iraq has been a constructive player in the neighborhood, trying to assure all our neighbors that the stability and sovereignty of Iraq is a common interest. And a lot of things in that regard is happening, and I'll be looking forward to talking to the President about it.
Thank you. Mr. Trump, Mr. President, the French President just now said that it's time to negotiate with Iran. Do you believe that time is now to negotiate with Iran? And are you going to...
Well, they would like to negotiate. We haven't really worked that out. They're here, we're here, but we have not agreed to that yet. But they would like to negotiate, and it would certainly make sense, but we have not agreed to that yet.
Are you meeting with Mr. Macron?
He is also talking to us. A number of people are. So is Prime Minister Khan of Pakistan, and a lot of people. Chancellor Merkel just left. Chancellor Merkel, and she's very much involved. We have a lot of people involved. A lot of people would like to get us to the table. We'll see what happens, but so far we have not agreed to a meeting.
Have you asked Prime Minister Khan to mediate with Iran?
Well, he'd like to do that, and we have a very good relationship, and there's a chance that that could happen. But no, I haven't spoken. He actually asked me. He thought it would be a good idea to meet. And we're here. We're in New York together, and we have the time to do it, although we've done a lot of bilats in the last 2 days. We've had tremendous success. I was treated very nicely on the speech, a lot of good reviews on what we had to say, and so I appreciate that. The media was actually very good on the speech.
Mr. President, your reaction to Speaker Pelosi saying today that she is moving toward an impeachment announcement later
Well, I haven't heard this. Look, it's just a continuation of the witch hunt. It's the worst witch hunt in political history. We have the strongest economy we've ever had. We have the best unemployment numbers we've ever had. African American, Asian American, Hispanic American, lowest in history. Best numbers we've ever had. Our country is doing phenomenally well. We have rebuilt our military to the tune of $2.5 trillion. We have the strongest military on earth. If you look at the vets, if you look at any group, they're doing fantastically well. So the country's doing the best it's ever done, and I just heard that she'd like to impeach. We also just had Rasmussen, as you heard, just came out with a poll. We're at 53, and they say 53 plus maybe 10. A lot of people say that because you add about 10% to the Trump polls, because some people don't want to talk, they just want to go out and do it, and they know what's good. Our country's doing the best it's ever done. They're going to lose the election, and they figure this is a thing to do. This never happened where we're in the election. And, I mean, if she does that, they all say that's a positive for me from the election. You could also say, who needs it? It's bad for the country. Then they wonder why they don't get gun legislation done. Then they wonder why they don't get drug prices lowered. Because all they do is talk nonsense. No more infrastructure bills. No more anything. All they do, that's all they do. You watch Jerry Nadler and Schiff. You know, Schiff has been doing this stuff for 3.5 years. It's the craziest thing anybody's ever seen. And other countries, like today we're with Iraq, and we were with other countries during the day, and every one of them says how crazy it is. We have the strongest country in the world, the best economy we've ever had, and she's talking impeachment. So I think that, and by the way, she hasn't even seen the phone call. The phone call was perfect. The call that wasn't perfect and the words that weren't perfect were Joe Biden with respect to his son. And his son takes away millions of dollars out of Ukraine and millions of dollars out of China. and you don't talk about that. It's a real disgrace. But the good news is the voters get it. This is why they say it's good for the election. But you know what? It's bad for the country. What she's doing is very bad. If it's true, I can't even believe it's true. How can you do this and you haven't even seen the phone call? The whistleblower, they say, was second hand or third hand. And it was reported, that I have no idea who the whistleblower is. I guess I could find out. Maybe I couldn't find out. But they say it was a very partisan person, the whistleblower. But it was second or third hand. Never heard the call. But I have better than that. We have the whole transcript of the call, which will be released tomorrow, and comments will be put with respect. It was a perfect call. There was no quid pro quo, unlike Biden. There was no nothing. It was a perfect call, a very nice call. And in fact, I thought this was very nice. Ukraine just came out and made a very good statement. It was a very good call. There was no pressure put on them whatsoever. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Come on, let's go.
Media.
Testing, testing.
Well, the message was one.
Just step in a little bit.
Okay,
That'd be great. We just want
Yeah,
members
the
to be able
message was really one of unity. The caucus is on board that this is at a different level now, that the president has endangered our national security by asking a foreign government to investigate his political opponent, actually to manufacture an investigation of a political opponent. And so we're going to have a resolution tomorrow to ask for the whistleblower report, ask the DNI, Director of National Intelligence, to make sure that the Congress has that and that there will be now an impeachment inquiry. So
do you feel that your caucus is completely on board with the way that this is played out? I know that a lot more moderate members have recently gotten on board with the impeachment inquiry.
Well, we're very grateful to the security and military veterans that came out today, and their concern that national security has been threatened by this president. So, we're going to proceed ahead with inquiry. The committees are going to continue to do their work. But in the meantime, this is different. This particular, that even if there had been nothing before this in terms of the president violating his responsibilities, that this would have been risen to the level that would inspire an impeachment inquiry. Of course, there has been a lot more. So I mean, everybody in different ways said, we're on board. And it was important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What?
Chairman, will you talk to us, please?
I have only one thing to say. Full speed ahead.
How is today any different than yesterday?
Now that you've made your proclamation, what's changed in the investigation? Can you speak to this?
What's changed is that what has changed, in addition, taking us to the proclamation, is that we have had a sea change, a crossing of the Rubicon, a new day has dawned, anything you want to say, into new territory. Because the President of the United States has admitted that he spoke to the President of a foreign country, that would be Ukraine, about something that would assist him in his political, in his election. So that has changed everything. So now, because the Inspector General has said that this is of urgent concern, it has and accelerated the pace of how we go forward. It's really a sad day for our country, actually. I feel very sad about it. And I hope that the Republicans will join us, as they have joined in the Senate in unanimous consent, passing a resolution for the release of the information. I hope the Republicans will join us in doing that tomorrow. Tomorrow, it's on the floor. But this is a sad day, but it is, again, focused and accelerated as we go
How
forward.
would you describe the difference procedurally, though, now that this has happened?
Good job, Rick. That was my question.